So we are now recording this session. And the first thing I wanted to do was to just a little reminder about in the Canvas platform, under the menu listing here, the announcements tab is where you can find recordings of lectures from previous sessions in the past, going back to earlier this year and into last year. So you can look at these sessions and use these to help you study for the midterm exam and help you to prepare for assignments and to help you prepare for the final exam later on too. So I wanted to just remind you where that announcements tab is. You have to make sure you're fully signed into the Canvas platform for the announcements tab to show up. And then, of course, on Sunday over the weekend, you have the midterm exam. Hello, Selena. How are you tonight?
Hi, and good evening. Good, and you?
Very well, thank you.
Good.
So we just started a couple minutes ago. You haven't really missed very much at all. I was just talking about the announcements tab on the Canvas platform.
Mm.
And this is where recordings of previous sessions from the past can be found.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then for the midterm exam over the weekend, it's based on modules 1 and module 2. So module 1, methodologies and sentence transformation, everything in module 1 plus everything in module 2, the language skills and parts of speech. So that's what is used for the midterm exam preparation. And then on Tuesday night, we talked about conversation activities a little bit, and Shazia presented her conversation activity. And then we started talking about the 4 skills lesson plan. So we're going to do more talking about the 4 skills lesson plan tonight. And that's found in this section, designing the 4 skills lesson plan, the structured lesson plans. So it lists major points of consideration that you need to include. And on the assessment template that I created for the 4 skills lesson plan, similar to the one I created for the conversation activities, but the 4 skills lesson plan assessment template looks like this. Now I have filled in some of the blanks. I filled in some answers here to give you an idea of how to design a 4 skills lesson plan. So I took all the headings, I took the titles of the different sections directly from the Canvas platform. And you can follow the Canvas platform as well to make sure that you don't miss any of these different sections that you are required to discuss and talk about. So this has a lengthy section here about considering some factors in the educational setting. The role of English in the country, where the class is being taught, whether it is a regular means of communication or primarily a subject taught in the school curriculum, where in turn it may or may not be the first foreign language of the students. Is English spoken in the community outside class or never heard? What is the role of English in the school and its place in the curriculum? The teachers, their status, their training, the mother tongue, attitudes to their job, expectations, the management, administration, and support personnel, all these factors come into play within the educational setting of any classroom. If you have done teaching, you'll be recognizing many of these points and you understand what we're talking about when we say they affect the education environment. So the number of pupils are being taught and the size of classes. A large class problem is very familiar one in many settings worldwide. So on Tuesday night, when Shazia presented her conversation activity, she had a class of students with 90 to 100 students in it. And I suggested that she needed to consider how to deal with that in a smaller group, doing breakout groups or something of that nature in order to make it a manageable thing for conversation activities. And any of these lesson plans should be designed for smaller groups of students. I understand at a university level, you're going to have lecture halls and larger groups of students for lectures and large tutorials. I understand that that's a reality sometimes, and you adapt to that in real life. But for the purpose of these lesson plans that you're designing, you should keep in mind a number of students that's around a 35 or 45 numbers of students maximum. And then it describes here about goals. You should be able to identify an overall purpose or goal that you will attempt to accomplish by the end of the class period. This objective may be quite generalized, but it serves as a unifying theme for you. The objectives, it's imperative to state explicitly what you want students to gain from the lesson. Explicit statements help you to be sure that you indeed know what it is you want to accomplish. It helps you to preserve the unity of your lesson plan, predetermine whether or not you are trying to accomplish too much, and evaluate students' success at the end of or after the lesson. Objectives are most clearly captured concerning what students will do. However, many language objectives are not overly observable, and therefore you may need to depart from strictly behavioral terms for some objectives. Try to avoid vague statements like students will learn about the passive voice, or students will practice some listening exercises, or students will make the reading selection. You would be unable to confirm the realization of any of these sorts of loosely stated objectives. You need to be very specific when you're stating your terminal and enabling objectives. In stating objectives, distinguish between the terminal goals, the final learning outcomes that will be measured and evaluated, and the enabling objectives, the interim steps that build upon each other and lead to the terminal objectives. So the enabling objectives, these are what are the students doing during the lesson to arrive at the terminal objective. The terminal objective is the benefit to the student after the lesson is finished. For example, the terminal lesson objective may be students will successfully request information about airplane arrivals and departures, while the enabling objectives will be students will comprehend and produce the following 10 new vocabulary items. Students will read and understand airline schedules. Students will produce questions with when, where, and what time. And students will produce appropriate polite forms of requesting. That would be requesting information from a ticket agent or somebody of that nature. The materials and equipment. Be sure that you're very specific about what materials you're going to be using in your lesson plan. And the procedures, a very general set of guidelines for planning. One might make sure his or her plan includes an opening statement or activity as a warm-up, a set of activities and techniques in which he or she has considered appropriate proportions of time for whole class work, small group, and pair work, time for the teacher to talk and time for students to talk. Evaluation. If a lesson has no evaluative component, one can easily make assumptions that are not informed by careful observation or measurement. Evaluation does not have to be a separate element of lessons, such as a test. It can take place in the course of regular classroom activity, informally as an assessment that is made after the students have sufficient opportunities for learning, and adjustments can be made to lesson plans for the following days. Extra class work. Finding applications or extensions of classroom activity that will help students to do some learning beyond the class hour are essential parts of teaching. Homework in the form of handout sheets for written repetitive exercises that have little to do with real life must be avoided. And this goes on with more guidelines for lesson planning. So there's a lot of material here, a lot of useful information that you can apply to not only the 4 skills lesson plan, which will have sections related to speaking, listening, reading, and writing, but you can also apply a lot of this information to your conversation activities. You notice how in this particular example, the procedures are laid out in quite a bit of detail. So you need to make sure that you've got a fair bit of detail. You should include some examples of the script that would be occurring in the role play. There's other listening activities identified here. Extra class assignment is laid out in great detail. And the evaluation is explained very clearly. Then there's a second lesson plan. This one is designed with a 50-minute time frame. And it's suggesting up in the corner of the whiteboard or the chalkboard, as the case may be in your classroom, before the students enter the class, write these questions with these blanks on. How often do you, and then the students would fill in which one of these they would be using, and they complete the sentences with an appropriate ending. This goes into a lot of detail, step by step, about what's happening in the classroom time, and you need to include lots of detail such as this with in your lesson plans. You know, having in the description of the procedure, which this part is, having 3 or 4 lines or a brief paragraph talking about what the students are doing is not sufficient. You need to have lots of detail, as in these examples that are here. Are there any questions about that? About the 4 skills lesson plan?
No, sir, not from my side.
Okay, that's fine. So if you don't have any questions, then we're going to look at the example that I shared with you briefly the other day, and we're going to talk about this and maybe expand a little bit on it, and to help you understand how to build a 4 skills lesson plan. Now, this is the last day that I'll be talking to you about this, and tomorrow, on Friday and on Saturday this week, Elham Masagi, Miss Masagi, is going to be having you do demonstrations of your 4 skill lesson plans, and she'll be giving you feedback on your 4 skill lesson plan designs. So you need to be working on getting at least one prepared that you can deliver as a demo in the webinar tomorrow night or Saturday night for Miss Masagi. Okay? It would be very similar to what you did as a demo with me with the conversation activities. But the 4 skills lesson plans, of course, are they're more extensive. They include items for all of the 4 skills: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So in this particular sample lesson plan that I've designed for students ages 14 to 15 with the title of Living Abroad, living in a different country overseas. The number of students is 25, the length of the class, 35 to 45 minutes. And I put a little note here that this might need to be extended over 2 days. I've suggested that the aptitude of these students is that they are reluctant learners. They're not happy about being there. What kind of motivation would that be that's causing them to be in this class? If they are reluctant to be there, what kind of motivation is putting them into this classroom? Is it intrinsic or extrinsic motivation?
Extrinsic motivation.
Yes, you're probably correct, Bushra. I would agree with you. So perhaps their parents are requiring them to attend these classes. And so you need to know the difference between these different definitions, and you need to understand what those differences mean. Intrinsic motivation is when the student is doing something because they really want to do it. Extrinsic motivation is when there is an external force that is causing them to take the class. I've suggested that the interest of these students is in social media, sports, and fashion. I've said that the mother tongue is French, with a mix of different cultures from South America, the Congo, and France. The academic and educational level, consistent schooling up to this point. You could put something else there. You could say that their English learning has been sporadic or random, or their English language learning has only been occurring for 2 years, or you can suggest whatever you want to say there. And I'm saying prior knowledge, textbook studying English since elementary school, and social media exposure. In this modern day and age of social media, the way social media exploded during the pandemic with Twitter and WhatsApp and Telegram and all these different social media apps that exist on our phones, social media interchange between people around the globe just exploded during the pandemic. And social media exposure is very big now in the world of education as well. The reasons for learning, intrinsic or extrinsic. And I've said here, intrinsic if they want to study abroad. So maybe these students are studying for intrinsic reasons because they really want to study abroad, so it's something they want to do. But there could be some of the students who are studying for extrinsic reasons if their parents require them to study. So I explained both situations here. And you could find that to be the case in some classes. You could find some students with intrinsic motivation and some students with extrinsic motivation. You could definitely have both. Then I said attitudes and motivation towards learning, teachers, the institution, the education institution, the target language. And again, I repeated the reticent, reluctant that I had up here about aptitude. That's all also part of their attitude. And then the target language proficiency level. I said beginners, and they want to become intermediate. So they want to improve to get better, of course. I mean, that's why anybody takes a course, so they can improve to get better. I saw a moment ago there was a little bubble that flashed on my screen. Somebody put something in the chat box, but I can't see the chat box when I'm sharing screen. Let me just see the chat box. Oh, the message from Hira Ali Shah. So she had some internet issues. Okay, so when you're submitting assignments to TESOL, you want to submit them to info@tesolcanada.org. That's how you submit assignments. I just had to have a quick look at the chat box there for a second. Sorry for that interruption. And I have said that the classroom environment in this situation is a non-native classroom. For the goals, I've said the overall purpose to accomplish here is to express likes and dislikes of living abroad. The enabling objectives, these are the interim steps. These are the things that occur during the process of delivering the lesson. The enabling objectives are the points and the activities that help the students to identify, describe, comprehend, produce, investigate, understand, etc., what is happening with things. So the students will produce speech in English to describe things they appreciate or not about other countries. We don't always have to like things that we hear about other countries. It is quite acceptable to not like something about another country. That's fine. Students will identify the correct use of grammatical structure for describing what they like and dislike. Students will investigate and identify what it is about living abroad that describes their cultural similarities or differences. The terminal objectives are the final learning outcomes which are measured and evaluated. By the end of this lesson, the students will be able to create sentence formations that are grammatically correct, read blogs on social media, reading travel brochures, contribute writings to blogs, and other things. You could put more points here as well. You could expand that even a little bit more if you wanted. Then I've said my methodologies, the approaches are CLT, GTM, ALM, and direct method. What does CLT stand for? What do the letters CLT stand for? You need to know these things for the midterm exam because on the midterm exam, there will be short forms such as these used, and you need to know what they stand for so that you can discuss them in your
Quantitative language teaching.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you very much, Selena.
Mm-hmm.
How about GTM? What does GTM stand for?
Grammar translation method.
Thank you. And ALM?
Um,
Audiolingual
Audiolingual.
Yes, audiolingual method.
method.
That's correct. And the direct method. Can you describe for me what does the direct method mean? What is the direct method? What is it like?
Direct method is like teaching the children mainly focus on the grammar, not focus on the speaking skills, and that was the common method that used to introduced in like the way Greek and Latin teach over there.
Well,
And
direct method is the method that is very much like the way we learn a language as we learn a new language as a young child. So it's a very natural way of learning a language. So the direct method,
oh, sorry, I got confused between direct method and another one.
that's okay, Bushra. You were describing the GTM.
Sorry, that's my mistake.
That's all right. So the direct method is a very natural method of learning a language, and it kind of follows the style that we use when as a young child when we're learning our mother tongue, because we learn directly by listening to people around us. We learn from what we hear being said around us. We're not writing grammar exercises as a 2-year-old child. When we're learning a language, we're just copying what we hear. There was a gentleman who followed the direct method, but he named it after himself. What was his name?
Berlitz.
Correct. What was his first name?
Berlitz method.
Yes, the Berlitz method. What was his first name?
First name. I don't know.
Charles.
Charles.
Okay, so you need to be very familiar with these short forms and what they mean and what methodologies they mean. So be sure to study that material quite thoroughly. And then I move on to my materials and equipment, and I just put X's beside all the items that I'll be using here. I also made a note there'd be flashcards, a group blog on social media, and then there'd be a vocabulary list that I will print and distribute to the students.
यहाँ बैठो तो मुझे करने तो दो.
And this will have a list of new words related to the topic of living abroad. So words such as challenge, abroad, culture shock, homesickness, climate change, environmentalism, names of meals, food. Different things such as that. Bushra, could you mute your mic for me, please? Thank you. So be sure to list out, if you want a vocabulary list included, be sure to list the words that will be on the vocabulary list. And then I say there will be written grammar exercises, because remember, with 4 skills, you need to have reading, writing, listening, and speaking activities in your process of this lesson plan. So the students will compose and write down questions on these topics. Excuse me. Students will ask for details about, and then you would explain in more detail here what you're going to have them talk about. Students will ask about details of what is a blizzard, for instance, or what is something else, what is a snowstorm, different things related to living abroad. So then I get into the procedures, the step-by-step. Excuse me. I get into the step-by-step. I start off with a warm-up exercise, and I identify separately the different activities. I have pre, during, and post activities. And then we get into the nitty-gritty of living abroad as individuals, and asking the students if they have any family who lives in a different country, and getting into the details of that conversation with them. This is just more extra space if you had more information you wanted to include. So this isn't even a complete lesson plan. This is just a sample of the type of thing that you would include. This should be much more extensive with many more points for it to be a completed lesson plan. Then I get to the evaluation. And it's the evaluation and the interaction between students that helps tremendously if you have a smaller group of students. So Shazia, with her group of 90 to 100 students, would be hard pressed to do small group work, or to, as a teacher, to monitor interaction between the students in a large lecture hall. That would just be almost impossible task to do. So keep the numbers of your students to a smaller group for practical reasons. Students will send the teacher their blog entries by email for assessment. Teacher monitors pair conversations. The students review additional videos for extra class work, answering additional questions about living abroad. And then the extra class work, students will be asked to write a response to questions about the extra videos, asked to review, and we will discuss at the beginning of the next class that written work. When you give extra class work, when you give homework assignments, you need to build in accountability to the students. So having them, requiring them to bring it back to the next class for discussion makes the students accountable to do the work. If you don't have accountability of some kind, many students won't do the homework assignments. Use other real-life assignments connected to the class work. Avoid handout worksheets and repetitive exercises because they can be boring. If the students have friends or relatives who live abroad, they can ask them about their experience and relate this back to the class. So that's my example of a 4 skills lesson plan. Any questions about that, ladies? No questions at all about the 4 skills lesson plan?
I have a question in regards to the evaluation. Would that be part of the evaluation would be at the end of the class or before ending the class, correct? And another part for homework.
Are you saying the evaluation, Selena?
Yes.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. Some of the evaluation is done during the class where the teacher is monitoring. So here the teacher is monitoring during the completion of activities in class time. The teacher is listening to the students speak to each other and correcting any grammatical structure errors they might have. But then there's the extra class work that is assessed when they bring it back the next day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
Is there an estimate of how long would they take for the assignments they're supposed to do for extra class work?
it should be a logical amount of time. So, for instance, if you're asking them to watch another video, you could maybe give them a list of 3 or 4 additional videos, and they could pick one, and they could write a brief description about the one video they pick. So the video might be 10 minutes long, and you might ask them to do a written description of that video that is half a page in length, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So you don't want to cause the extra class assignments, the extra class work, you don't want to cause that to be so extensive that it's overwhelming and they just don't do it because it's too big. It
Mm-hmm.
needs it needs to be, I call it bite size activities and assignments. They need to be able to bite off what they have to do, and they need to be able to chew it and digest it. So they need to have a short video to watch. But if you give them a selection of 3 or 4 to choose from, then that gives the students some ownership of making determinations with the assignment as well. And
Mhm.
students like that, you know.
Mhm. Sorry, is this for us? I don't remember what age the students. So what is the target age of these students? 14, 15?
14 to 15, so teenagers.
Mm-hmm. And yes, the reason why I was asking about the evaluation time for assignments is when, especially for with this age range, when they are taking courses for credits. For instance, we have to be very specific in terms of the amount of time they're spending for extra work.
Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
No, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
So you could identify here extra videos,
Mm-hmm.
and you could say 10 minutes
Mm-hmm.
in length.
I see. Okay.
You know, you can identify points that you want to include with the instructions.
Okay, just to mention that in the homework or extra class work.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and the written work, half page to describe video.
Sure.
And you know, writing half a page is not going to take the student a long time to do.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a logical and reasonable amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
Does that help to answer the question?
Yes, yes, definitely. It also depends on the level, right? Of the students. If they are so they're lower, but the beginners, if they might take a little bit longer, probably. Well,
Of course.
yeah.
And so I suggested that the
Beginner.
target language proficiency level is these are beginners moving into intermediate.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, half a page to write about a video, half a page of written work is not too long for beginner level, but it gives them a chance to write 4 or 5 sentences to describe the video that they watch.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yes.
And then this one, if the students have friends or relatives who live abroad, they can ask them about their experience and relate it back to the class. So in this instance, the students could get emails or texts from relatives to summarize and share with class. Because if you ask them to get emails from family member or friends, if you ask them to get emails or texts and then summarize the information, that process of summarizing is a very good learning experience for the students as well.
Yes, and there might be a need of translating the information into the target language, right?
Of course,
Mm-hmm.
yes, exactly,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. So, you know, these are great questions that you have, Selena, and these questions that you're asking just help to illustrate the fact that there's no one absolute right or wrong way of designing these lesson plan activities. You just need to think of a topic
Mm-hmm.
and then start filling in the blanks.
Sure. Would it be possible to get a copy of this template?
Well, what I'll do, excuse me, got a tickle in my throat tonight.
Mm, that's okay.
what I'm willing to do is if you send me an email and ask me for this example,
Mhm.
if you scroll down further, down to the next page, you get a blank version, a totally blank version of it.
Perfect. Yes. Well, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Excuse me. And then you can copy this blank version and
Mhm.
you can copy and paste it into your Word document and you can fill it in for your different 4 skills lesson plans activities.
Sure.
So in this one document, you've got the example that I've got partially filled out because this is not absolutely complete, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is the one I went through with you, but scroll down further and you get a blank template to work with.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Okay. And how many do I have to prepare for um, week
Are
or
you
the
are you
following?
in diploma?
Advance.
You're in advanced, I believe, is
Mm-hmm. Okay.
4 lesson plans. Foundation is 2 and diploma is 6.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. I will send you an email then. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Okay, any other questions about this 4 skills lesson plan? No other questions about that? Okay. We've just got a few minutes left. I'm going to go back to the Canvas platform because I cannot stress enough how important it is for you to be familiar with these methodologies and knowing the names of them and understanding the short forms. So what does EFL mean? What does that stand for? What is EFL?
EFL is the English as a foreign language.
Correct. Thank you, Alia. And on the exam, you could be given a list of these short forms and you could be asked to explain what they stand for and describe them in 2 or 3 sentences. That is a short answer question, short answer style question that is quite common on the exam. So you need to be familiar with these acronyms and know things like acculturation and what that means. Understand what acculturation is, and when somebody is moving into a new culture and they're adapting to a new life in a foreign country, that's what acculturation is. You need to understand and know what's happening with these things. But you also need to be very familiar with the methodologies. Doing these quiz sheets is an important thing to do as well. Make sure you do all the quizzes. So here we get into the different methodologies. You've got the grammar translation method, gives you history about it. It talks about what it was, how it was applied. Then it talks about the direct method. And you need to know this stuff. When I was studying for these exams, I made short form notes from the Canvas platform. I did my own short form handwritten notes just because I like doing it that way and it helps me to study. By writing it out by hand, that helps you to remember the information as well. It's a memorization trick that I've picked up over the years with my studying. So you need to understand and know these different things, like these principles of the direct method that were summarized by Richards and Rogers. You need to be able to discuss things like this. You could be asked a question to identify four of the principles of the direct method as summarized by Richards and Rogers, and discuss those four principles. That could be a potentially a question on the exam. So go through this material and make sure you know the, well, that's not what I wanted. Trying to go to the next page here. Make sure you know these short forms of the different methodologies. Make sure you know what the acronyms stand for, and read through this material thoroughly. Have you received an email yet from TESOL about the time of the exam? Have you received any information about the exam?
Not yet. Well, I got one, but I wasn't able to do it on the time because of it. So
We got an email about midterm exams, and we appeared in it. And they have also sent us an email of passing that midterm exam. So we have done with our midterm exam only.
You already wrote it.
Yeah, yeah. Midterm
When
exam.
did,
I'm talking about midterm exams.
yeah, when did you write the midterm exam, Bushra?
Uh, it was last our Sunday. That your Monday and our Sunday.
Right, and so you already got your mark back.
They marked us back, but I did not receive the marking on my essay, but I received the marking about my midterm exam, and they just sent me an email that you have passed this exam.
Very good. Good for you.
Thank you, sir.
So your first essay, your foundation essay,
Yeah,
was
they
due
did not mark it.
well, they'll get to it soon, so don't worry about that.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
It was due last Sunday. The
Okay.
conversation activities are due this Sunday on the 27th.
Yes. Sir, today or tomorrow I will submit that. I will work it today, and tomorrow I will submit that.
Very good.
Inshallah.
Very good. And then next week I'll be talking to you about the MOOC essay and the introduction to MOOC, massive open online courses, and your MOOC essay will be due on December 4th.
All right, sir.
So you've got a number of deadlines coming up to submit assignments, and you should try to keep on top of those. Okay. So does anybody else have questions about the 4 skills lesson plan?
Not now, sir. Not from my side.
Okay. So just for those of you who do not know exactly yet, I am going to type my email address in the chat box for you so that you can send me an email to request that 4 skills lesson plan sample that you can use as a guideline. Did I type that, spell it correctly? Yes, I spelled my name correctly this time. That's good. I put my email address in the chat box with one group of students a few months ago. I spelled my name wrong, and they were copying it and trying to send me emails, and they said it's not, the email keeps coming back. I hadn't spelled my name correctly, but I did spell it correctly for you ladies this time. So there you go. So that's the 4 skills lesson plan. know these methodologies. Know these very well. In fact, you can't know these well enough. You need to know them extremely thoroughly. And don't forget to go into the resources. This is under modules. And this Canada handbook still is not here. I hope that arrives soon because it's a good reference resource. But the TESOL manual, you should download this PDF, this TESOL manual, and have it to work with as a study guide because it has very good descriptions of the different methodologies. It's a good resource booklet for you to have as a reference as well. Okay. So any questions about any of this, ladies?
No question, sir.
No questions? Okay.
No, no, thank you.
Very good. In that case, I think we're going to end for the night. And I want to thank you for being here. I won't see you now until, when do I see you next? This is the 24th. I will see you on Tuesday, the 29th. At that point, I will be introducing MOOC and the MOOC essay to you. And I'll be doing MOOC again on Thursday, December the 1st. So I'll see you next Tuesday, ladies. Have a good few days. Stay safe. Take good care of your family. Enjoy your kids.
Same to you, sir. Same to you. Good
Same to you,
night.
sir. Thank you very much,
Safe.
sir. Same to you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to stop the recording now.
Okay.